In the next 10 or so minutes, you are going to become a master of the deadlift, which is, in my opinion, one of the most technical lifts to master and get good at. So I am going to run you through all of the little nuances and the little technical things that you need to know to progress with your deadlift. I'm going to be teaching this from the point of view of developing strength, power, and putting more plates on the bar. So I'm going to be talking in the context of trying to generate as much power as possible for the lift versus the other way to do it, which is to focus on doing it for hypertrophy, for building muscle. We're going to be talking about generating as much power and as much strength as humanly possible. And I'm basically going to give you a really easy to follow checklist of things to do to set you up for a really good deadlift. The most important thing when starting and getting ready for your deadlift is picking a good shoe. You basically want something which is going to allow you to make real good contact with the ground. So a really flat shoe, like a deadlifting shoe with a really small sole, or me personally, I just like fucking socks, mate. Socks all the way. But the reason that's important is because when we actually go to perform the lift, a big part of it is being able to push really hard off the floor and generate a lot of force pushing off the floor. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm pushing into the floor as hard as I possibly can. Now, the flatter your foot, right, the better that you can make contact with the ground, and the more balanced you are, the more force you're going to be able to produce. If your feet are unstable, then what happens is, because your nervous system is very clever, your nervous system is basically going to tone back how much force you can produce. Why? Because if we are unstable and we produce a lot of force, we could potentially hurt ourselves. So our nervous system is basically like, listen, you need to chill out. We're going to tone you back to about 75%. So you don't hurt yourself. The more stable we are, the more force we can produce. So step one, footwear, very important. Step two is feet positioning. So when I come up to the bar, I'm basically looking to put my feet about in line with my hips. You can come a little bit more narrow, you can come a little bit more wide. It kind of depends on how long your legs are. It's important that I don't go too wide. If I go too wide, I'm basically doing a sumo deadlift, which is a topic for a whole other video. And I'm basically stepping up to the bar and I'm lining up the barbell with the middle of my foot. And now that's important. The reason it's really important to line up the bar with the middle of your foot is because when I come down like this and when I'm going to get ready to pull, I'm basically, once I straighten my back and tuck my bum down and get ready to lift, my shins are going to be making very light contact with the actual bar. Essentially, when I do the lift, I'm going to try and keep that bar in contact with my shins the entire time. So when you line the barbell up with the middle of your foot, basically it gives you enough room so that when you come down, your shins are only going to be touching the bar. If you go any further in, then you're basically going to scrape the bar really badly against your shins and you're going to bleed a lot, and you don't want that. Number two, barbell in line with the middle of your foot is a good place to start. So next question, where do I grab the bar? Great question. What I like to do personally is I like to grab the bar with my first finger and my thumb, basically right on the edge of the knurling. Knurling? I don't even know if I'm saying that properly. Knurling. Yeah, I don't know how to say that word. Anyway, the fucking rough part of the bar, yeah? I'm basically lining up my first finger and my thumb with the outer bit of that knurling. And the reason I'm doing that is because I can basically make sure that my hands, my grip, they're nice and symmetrical. I'm basically grabbing the bar evenly on either side of the bar, which is really important because I don't know if you've ever done a deadlift where you haven't grabbed the bar evenly on either side, like it's not symmetrical, and then you'll pull, and what will happen, I'll show you, is say if I grab close on this side here and a bit wide on here, what's going to happen is when I pull, I'm going to be unstable. So I'm going to pull and generate loads of power, and the bar is basically going to slip either way, throw me off balance. It's going to ruin my lift, so we don't want to do that. So I'm just basically using that bit of knurling as guidance for my hand placement. And another little cool thing you'll notice when you grab the bar here is that if you position your feet properly, hip width apart, is that when you come in ready to perform the lift, your biceps, the lower part of your biceps and your forearms should be just touching the outside of your knees. And me personally, I really like to deadlift as tight as possible in my form. So when I'm coming down here, I really want to be as tight so that when I pull, I'm essentially as stable as I can possibly be. Everything's nice and compact. I like it like that. So let's recap real quick. Number one, shoes. Number two, feet placement. Number 3, hand placement. Now, all of those things are done. The bar's lined up in the middle of my foot. I've gripped where I'm supposed to grip. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to take my deadlift position. A really good cue to help you with this is I want you to think about sitting in a seat behind you. So I want you to think about you trying to sit in a seat behind you like this. And the important bit here is essentially not to come too deep in like this. You're not trying to do like an Olympic lift or like a snatch or something. We're sitting like this, like we're trying to sit in a seat behind us. Our back's nice and straight, right? It's stable. And then what that's going to allow us to do is basically bring our chest higher up to the sky, our bum down, our chest up, and it straightens out our arms. So here, there's like, I don't want to say slacken the arms, that's not right, but basically, when we force our chest up like this, it's really forcing our arms to extend. And that's important because when our arms extend like this, it's helping to pull some slack out of the bar, which is important when we come to lift, because we don't want slack in the bar when we lift. So we take the slack out of the bar so we have a really smooth point A to B when we lift. So bum down like you're trying to sit in a seat. Chest is higher up to the sky. By doing that, you're extending the arms, you're pulling the slack out of the bar. Now, at first, this is going to feel really awkward and you might struggle to get into that position. So what we could do is potentially wear some squat shoes to help us get into that position, but that might affect your balance. So personal preference really, but you just got to practice it and you'll get better and better at getting that form nice and tight and sinking into it. And now we're pretty much ready to pull. So we're here, really good position. This is our deadlift position. And also really important point that you want to consider is that when you're in this position here and you eventually lift, you want to look forward the entire time. You don't want to look down at the ground, because what happens is that when you look at the ground, naturally your back is going to follow. So what I mean by that is that if we look down when we lift, our back is slowly going to graduate forward like that, and we're going to start to round our back. So by looking up the entire time, it basically helps us to keep our back straight and to keep a good posture and to keep a nice, safe and stable back. And the next step is going to be bracing. So we got the position down. We know exactly what position we're going to pull from. Now we need to brace our core and get a nice, strong posture ready for a lift. And the way we're going to do that is quite simply, we take a really big, deep breath in. And what that's going to do, it's going to inflate our lungs and our rib cage and our core. So with an inflated rib cage and an inflated core, it's going to tighten everything up. And that is really good for keeping your spine in a nice, safe position. You've got a tighter core and a stronger posture. This is why we might use something like a lifting belt, because a lifting belt is really good at keeping you tight and helps with the lift. So bracing is important, because if you don't brace, you want a really good brace essentially to help you with the lift and to make sure that your spine positioning and everything stays where it should while you lift. Big deep breath in. Now we're ready to pull. And this is the really important bit, right? And the cue that I want you to think about when you're doing this is we aren't pulling the bar off the ground, we are pushing the floor away with our quads. We are pushing the floor away to here. Once we get to here, our legs have finished their part of the movement, then it's glutes, hamstrings, lats that are going to help us get from the knee to full lockout. That's what we've got to remember, is that from the floor till knees is all quads. Then from knees to lockout is hamstrings, glutes, lats. And it's a really good cue, because when you focus on pushing the floor away versus pulling off the ground, it's going to help you to activate a lot more muscle fibers in your quads, and your quads are where all the power is at. All the power comes from those quads. You're a lot stronger in your quads than you are in your back. And the goal here is when we're ready to pull off the ground, we are thinking speed and power, right? We're thinking in our heads, we're mapping out how this lift is going to go. And that's important. Do you know why? Because when you picture yourself doing the lift and you think about the lift you're about to do, it can help you activate more muscle fibers, and it can definitely help you generate more power. So when I'm here, I'm literally visualizing how this lift's going to go, and I'm thinking about me pulling it off the ground so that when I pull, I'm going to generate more power, more speed, more force. Once we've locked out, then we do not want to just drop the bar. We want a nice, slow, controlled eccentric. We want to always remain in control of the bar, come lock out, back to the ground. And what we're going to do is we're going to hinge at the hips. We're going to slowly lower the bar, keeping a tight form and a straight back until we get to the ground. And then that is it. The deadlift is done. Let's recap. Number 1, shoes. Number 2, feet positioning. Number 3, grip. Number 4, sitting in a seat, chest high. Number 5, brace. Number 6, push the floor away to knees. Then hamstrings, glutes, lats to lock out. And that, my friends, is how you master the deadlift and become an absolute beast.